They laughed when you fell, but they'll whisper when you rise. My friends, let that sink in for a moment, because this is not just about rejection, it's about resurrection, about being written off, walked over, and still choosing to stand taller than the ones who doubted you. Welcome to dark Stoicism, where silence is strategy, pain is alchemy, and power is earned in the shadows. Before we go deep, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me till the end, because what I'm about to tell you will flip the meaning of rejection upside down. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing in the rain, heart cracked open, eyes heavy from sleepless nights. The person you gave your best to just turned their back like you were nothing more than a chapter in their story. You're there, holding pieces of yourself, trying to understand how someone could throw you away so easily when you were already struggling to breathe. That's the kind of pain that doesn't just bruise the heart, it rewires it. But here's the truth nobody told you. That moment wasn't your downfall. It was the day the old you died. And something far more unshakable was born. Because rejection, my friends, isn't the universe punishing you. It's redirecting you. You think they broke you, but all they did was hand you the blueprint for your own strength. See, when someone rejects you at your weakest, they think they've won. They think you'll crumble, beg, chase. They think they've secured control over your worth. But that's where their story ends and yours begins. Because in silence, when no one is clapping, when no one is validating you, that's where real transformation happens. It's like gold being purified in fire. Nobody claps for gold when it's melting, but that's the only way it becomes pure. That was you, melting, burning, breaking, while they walked away thinking the fire would destroy you. But they forgot something. Fire doesn't destroy gold. It refines it. They rejected you when you were still figuring out who you were. They mistook your exhaustion for weakness, your love for desperation, your effort for neediness. But my friends, there comes a time when every soul that's been underestimated begins to remember its own power. And when that happens, the energy shifts. Suddenly, the one who once begged becomes silent, and the one who once ignored starts to wonder. That's the power of emotional evolution, when you stop fighting to be seen and start mastering your silence. Because silence, it's not empty. It's loaded. It carries everything you once said, everything they ignored, everything they'll one day replay in their mind when they realize what they lost. And let's be honest, people rarely regret losing you when you're broken. They regret it when you become everything they thought you'd never be, when your peace becomes louder than your pain, when your glow terrifies the ones who left you in the dark. So if you're watching this right now and you're in that phase where it hurts, where the rejection feels personal, permanent, remember this: it's not the end, it's the training ground. You're not losing, you're loading, you're preparing to meet the version of you that they couldn't handle. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." The obstacle is not blocking your path, my friends. It is the path. The rejection wasn't a curse. It was your introduction to your real power. So breathe, laugh a little at the irony. Because one day soon, the same people who doubted you will scroll through your life and wonder how you did it, how you went from broken to untouchable. But you'll know. You didn't need to prove them wrong. You just had to prove yourself right. Write this in the comments right now. I rise from rejection. Press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because what's coming next will show you exactly how they'll beg for the peace they once walked away from. Number 1. The moment they walked away. Sometimes the person who abandons you at your lowest isn't evil. They're just too weak to handle your becoming. There's a moment in every story that burns itself into your memory, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The silence after they walked away, the hollow space where their presence used to be. The moment they turned their back while you were still holding pieces of yourself together, and you realized they didn't see you, they only saw your struggle. That's the moment everything inside you shifts, because the truth is, they didn't reject you. They rejected the reflection of their own weakness, mirrored in your vulnerability. Imagine this. You're drowning, reaching out, hoping someone will grab your hand, and instead they step back, watching you sink, convincing themselves it's not their responsibility to help. That's how emotional abandonment feels. It's not just pain, it's disorientation. You start asking questions you shouldn't have to ask. Was I too much? Did I love too deeply? Did I push them away by caring too hard? But here's the thing, people who can't swim in depth will always call it dangerous. They'll label your intensity as chaos because it exposes their lack of courage. They'll call your honesty drama because it demands accountability. They'll say you're too emotional because your presence awakens something in them they're not ready to face. It's easier for them to walk away than to grow up. That's the part you need to see clearly, my friends. Rejection is rarely about your lack, it's about their limit. You became a mirror they couldn't look into anymore, because mirrors don't lie. And deep down, they knew they weren't giving what you deserved. They knew your love required consistency, presence, truth, things they couldn't sustain. So instead of stepping up, they stepped out. But let's be real, being left when you're already low does something to you. It rewires how you see yourself. It plants seeds of fear. You start to believe maybe love really is conditional. Maybe you really are hard to love. Maybe the world rewards the detached and punishes the deep. That's the lie, and it's time to burn it. Because darkness always tries to convince you that you're not light enough. But remember, stars don't prove their worth under sunlight. They shine when everything else disappears. You were never too much. You were just with someone who preferred less. And that's not your failure. That's their comfort zone. See, people love the idea of loyalty until it requires emotional responsibility. They love the image of connection until it demands presence. But Stoicism teaches us something vital. You can't force someone to meet you at the depth they keep running from. You can only master your reaction to their absence. The fear that haunts you after rejection isn't really about them. It's about the possibility that they were right about you, but they weren't. The part of you that believes you weren't enough is simply echoing what someone else projected onto you. Let it echo, but don't let it stay. Because every time you choose to see that rejection not as an insult, but as information, you take your power back. They left not because you were unworthy, but because they were unready. You see, people tend to confuse your breaking point with your end point. They thought that when they left, your story would fade, but what they didn't realize is that pain doesn't destroy those who feel deeply. It rebirths them. Just like a forest fire clears the land for stronger roots, your heartbreak is creating the space where your higher self will grow. The ashes they left behind will soon bloom into something they'll never recognize. Ask yourself this. What if their leaving wasn't punishment, but protection? What if the universe removed them because you were about to rise in ways that would expose everything false about them? What if rejection was just divine redirection? That's the mindset shift that changes everything. Because while they were walking away thinking they broke you, life was already setting you up for your breakthrough. It's not supposed to be easy. Growth never is. It's supposed to hurt, to confuse you, to make you question your worth, so that when you rebuild, you do it with awareness instead of attachment. The pain you feel right now, that's the sound of your soul stretching. It's you expanding beyond the version of yourself that needed their validation. And yes, it will feel lonely. Yes, it will feel unfair. But peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from understanding yourself. They'll tell themselves they made the right choice. They'll convince themselves you were too complicated, too emotional, too demanding. Let them. Because every story we outgrow requires a villain in their version. Don't waste your time trying to rewrite how they see you. Just focus on rewriting how you see yourself. Because one day they'll look back and realize that the same person they dismissed was the person who taught them what loyalty actually feels like. Here's the irony. The same silence they thought meant defeat will become your greatest weapon. Your absence will echo louder than your presence ever did. They'll scroll through memories trying to remember when they started feeling empty. They'll wonder why your peace unsettles them, why your stillness feels so loud. That's the moment they'll understand. The thing they walked away from wasn't weakness. It was rare energy. And by the time they do, you'll have already become someone they can no longer reach. So, if they walked away when you were still learning to stand, don't chase them. Don't explain your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. Rejection doesn't mean you're forgettable. It means you're unforgettable in a way they weren't equipped to handle. They'll regret it, not because you disappeared, but because you evolved. Because while they were busy escaping their fears, you were mastering yours. Remember this, my friends. Strength is quiet. Power doesn't announce its return. It simply appears, unbothered, refined, and unreachable. That's the version of you that's coming. That's the one they'll beg to understand. So when that fear tries to whisper, "What if they never come back?" smile and answer, "Then it was never meant for me." Because your job was never to make them see your worth. It was to see it yourself. Write this down in the comments. My pain is my power. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that rejection was the moment you were chosen, not by them, but by life itself. Because what's coming next, my friends, isn't revenge. It's a rebirth. Stay with me. Number 2. Why they rejected you was never about you. People don't abandon you because you're hard to love. They abandon you because love asks them to face parts of themselves they've been running from. Let that settle for a second, because this is the truth no one likes to admit. Most of the time, rejection has very little to do with who you are. It's about who they are not yet ready to become. When someone walks away from you during your weakest moment, they're not walking away because you're broken. They're walking away because your vulnerability exposes how fragile they really are. You showed them a mirror, and instead of looking into it, they smashed it and blamed you for the reflection. Imagine this, my friends. You're holding a lantern in the dark, offering light to someone who says they're afraid of the night. But the moment you lift that lantern close to their face, they flinch. Not because the light hurts them, but because it reveals them. It shows the insecurities, the fears, the emotional bruises they've buried deep. And instead of standing in the light with you, they retreat. They tell themselves you're too intense, too emotional, too much. But what they really mean is, you make me feel seen, and I don't know how to handle that. You see, many people confuse comfort with connection. They want affection, but not accountability. They crave attention, but not awareness. They want to feel loved, but only if it doesn't require growth. And when you love deeply, when you love fearlessly, you become a mirror for their emotional immaturity. They can't hide behind apathy when your compassion calls them out. They can't fake depth when your presence demands truth. And rather than rise to meet you, they'll run. That's why rejection from deep souls hurts so much. It's not just a breakup, it's a spiritual collision. You were trying to build something real with someone who was only strong enough for surface-level love. And it's easier for them to walk away than to do the inner work your energy was silently asking of them. Because real connection requires courage. It requires someone to sit in the discomfort of their own reflection and say, I still choose to stay. But most don't. Most choose escape. Now let's break the biggest lie people believe after being rejected. If I was better, they would have stayed. Number. If they were braver, they would have stayed. Because rejection is not an evaluation of your worth. It's an exposure of their limits. They left because your energy asked for growth. They left because your love was a challenge, not a convenience. They left because their ego couldn't coexist with your emotional truth. And I know what you're thinking. If it wasn't about me, why does it still hurt so much? Because your mind is wired to personalize pain. When someone walks away, the brain looks for fault, for logic, for something it can fix. But sometimes there's no logic, only lessons. You weren't rejected, you were redirected, you weren't discarded, you were protected. The universe saw what you couldn't. It knew they weren't strong enough to hold the version of you that's coming. Pain makes us see the world through a cracked lens, and from that place, everything feels personal. But Stoicism teaches us, don't interpret rejection emotionally, interpret it informationally. Ask yourself, what truth is this showing me? Maybe it's showing you who was pretending. Maybe it's showing you where your boundaries still leak. Maybe it's showing you what kind of love you've outgrown. But it's never showing you that you're unworthy. Let's be honest, folks. Sometimes they didn't even know why they left. People with unresolved wounds often mistake peace for boredom. When you're steady, they call it dull. When you're loyal, they call it clingy. When you're consistent, they call it predictable. They don't realize that the storm inside them is distorting the calm you bring. They don't understand that the peace you offer is the medicine they've been avoiding. So they reject you, not because your love wasn't enough, but because it was too healing, and healing requires facing pain. There's an old saying, some people don't want partners, they want distractions. You stopped being a distraction the moment you asked for depth. You stopped being entertainment the moment you started being honest, and that's when they started pulling away. Because truth is uncomfortable for those who live behind masks, but their discomfort isn't your burden. You can't shrink your truth just to keep someone else comfortable in their denial. What's wild, though, is that rejection from people like this often becomes the very fuel for your rebirth. Their leaving ignites your becoming. Because when someone takes away external validation, you have no choice but to find internal peace. That's the paradox. They thought they freed themselves from responsibility, but they accidentally freed you from illusion. And here's where it gets poetic. While they're out there avoiding growth, you're evolving. You're shedding, rebuilding, transforming. They'll glance at you months later and feel a strange mix of regret and confusion. Not because they suddenly love you, but because they're seeing the version of you that was always there, the one they were too blind to recognize. The same energy they couldn't value then will become the standard they can't reach now. So, my friends, when your mind tries to replay that rejection like a failure, remind yourself, it was a filter. Life was separating what couldn't go where you're headed. They rejected you because their soul wasn't calibrated for your frequency. And that's not your loss, that's your liberation. You are not the wound they walked away from. You are the healer they couldn't face. They didn't break your worth, they revealed it. You were never too much. You were simply too real for someone who wasn't ready for reality. So breathe, stand tall, and let that truth sink in. Their rejection was your redirection toward self-mastery. Let them go with grace, not resentment. Because what you're stepping into isn't revenge, it's revelation. Write this in the comments right now. Their rejection revealed my power. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that what they walked away from has now become unstoppable. And stay with me, because in the next part, we're going to talk about how your silence becomes the echo that wakes their regret. Number 3, the silence that terrified them. When you go silent, you don't disappear. You become the echo that won't let them rest. My friends, silence is misunderstood. People think it means defeat. They think the quiet after rejection means you've given up, that you've accepted loss, that you're gone. But real silence, the Stoic kind, is not surrender. It's a strategy. It's the moment the storm stops trying to explain itself to the trees that never understood its power. Silence is not the end of communication. It's the beginning of realization. You see, when they rejected you, they thought your energy would still orbit around them. They expected the usual pattern, the late-night texts, the desperate need for closure, the emotional confessions. They believed you'd keep feeding the connection even after they cut the cord. But when you went quiet, when you chose absence over argument, everything inside them shifted. Because for the first time, they weren't hearing from you. They were hearing from themselves. Imagine this. They're scrolling through their phone at night, expecting your name to light up their screen like it always did. But it doesn't. They check your social media, expecting to see sadness, longing, pain, but instead it's calm, stillness, maybe even growth, and that's when the discomfort begins to creep in. Because silence, my friends, isn't empty, it's full of everything they once ignored. When you go silent, you force them to sit in the space your energy used to fill, and that space starts to feel heavy. Because before, your presence was their comfort, even when they claimed they didn't need it. You were the mirror, the validation, the background music to their chaos. And now, there's just quiet. That quiet becomes haunting. It exposes their own noise. See, silence is one of the most powerful psychological tools in existence. It doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it doesn't chase, it confronts. It puts all the weight back on the person who left, and the longer you stay silent, the more that weight grows. Because the human mind doesn't do well with unresolved endings. When someone you expect to need you suddenly disappears without drama, the ego panics. It starts asking questions like, wait, did I misjudge them? Are they over me? Did I matter at all? That's when curiosity turns into regret. They'll replay moments in their head, the arguments, the cold replies, the times they dismissed your care, and wonder if they were too cruel, too quick, too blind. They'll scroll through old messages like archaeologists searching for meaning in ruins they created. Because silence doesn't just remove you, it turns you into a mystery. And mystery is magnetic. The less you reveal, the more they project. But let's be honest, silence is not easy, especially for those of us who love deeply, who crave understanding. The hardest part is resisting the urge to break it, to explain your pain, to prove your worth. But that's where the real power lies, in staying still when every part of you wants to shout. Because your silence isn't weakness, it's emotional discipline. It's you saying, I no longer perform for the people who never listened. Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. And silence is exactly that. You don't match their indifference with desperation. You match it with peace. You stop fighting for recognition, and that absence becomes your loudest statement. Because peace, to the chaotic, is unbearable. When someone who once fed on your energy can no longer access it, they start to unravel. Picture this. They're surrounded by people, laughter, distractions. But there's an emptiness in their chest that nothing fills. That's not loneliness, it's awareness. The awareness that something genuine is gone. That awareness wasn't there before because you kept cushioning it with contact. But now, with the silence, reality echoes. They start to miss you, not out of love, but out of loss. Because now they can feel the emotional gravity you carried, and they can't replicate it. And here's the beautiful irony. They once accused you of being too emotional, too intense, too much. But when you stop expressing, when you stop giving, they start craving the very energy they mocked. They start missing the attention, the softness, the presence they took for granted. That's the quiet revenge of emotional maturity. You didn't need to clap back. You just needed to withdraw. But I know, my friends, that silence can feel lonely. You'll wonder if they even notice, if they care, if they've already replaced you. Don't let those thoughts betray your progress, because silence is not about them. It's about you reclaiming your energy. You're not going quiet to punish them. You're going quiet to protect your peace. You're teaching yourself that closure is an internal event, not a conversation. And eventually, that peace becomes visible. It shows in your posture, your tone, your glow. It's the kind of calm that can't be faked, and they'll feel it, even from afar. Because silence is not absence. It's presence without access. It's energy that says, you can feel me, but you can't reach me. That's what terrifies them. The realization that you no longer need them to understand your worth, that you've become the version of yourself they were never ready for. And once someone experiences that kind of detachment from you, they'll chase it in others and never find it again. Because you can replace people, but you can't replace peace. So, when the urge to break your silence rises, remind yourself, you don't owe them a sound. Every second you stay silent, you're rebuilding your strength. You're showing the world, and yourself, that emotional control is the highest form of power. They left thinking they'd find freedom in your absence. Instead, they found emptiness. And when they finally return, knocking on the door they once slammed shut, they won't be met with anger. They'll be met with calm, the kind of calm that says, I already made peace with your absence. Write this in the comments right now. My silence speaks louder. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that you've learned the art of quiet strength. Because, my friends, the next part is where everything shifts, when the silence ends and the transformation begins. Stay with me. Number 4, the alchemy of pain, turning rejection into power. What tried to break you wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to show you what you're made of. Pain is strange, isn't it? It feels unbearable when you're in it, but months or years later, you look back and realize it was building you. Like fire forging metal, it was shaping you into something sharper, tougher, unshakable. The same rejection that once left you on your knees becomes the reason you rise higher than you ever imagined. That's what I call the alchemy of pain, turning the emotional lead of heartbreak into the gold of strength. My friends, every storm has two sides. On one side, destruction, on the other, rebirth. The difference lies in how you choose to stand in the rain. You can let it drown you, or you can let it wash away everything that was never truly you. Because when someone rejects you, what's really happening is a divine purification. The universe is saying, this version of you is no longer needed where you're going. Let's be honest. You wouldn't have found your discipline, your peace, or your purpose if everything had gone right. Comfort doesn't build kings. Pain does. It forces you to stop seeking validation from those who don't value you. It makes you examine your patterns, your fears, your emotional triggers. It makes you go inward, and that's where power lives. Imagine a blacksmith at work. He doesn't mold steel gently. He heats it until it glows red, then hammers it until it's strong enough to hold its shape. That's exactly what life does to you through rejection. It tests your resilience. It burns away your need for approval. It hammers you until all that's left is the truth of who you are. And the more you resist the process, the longer it hurts. But the moment you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Everything changes. The problem is, most people don't understand the language of pain. They try to escape it, numb it, avoid it. But pain avoided is pain multiplied. What you resist persists. And that's why most people stay stuck. They run from the lesson hidden inside the suffering. Stoicism teaches us that we don't control what happens, we only control how we respond. Rejection isn't a tragedy, it's training. It's the emotional gym where your spirit builds muscle. You might not see it yet, but your pain has been working behind the scenes, rewriting your story. Every sleepless night you survived, every tear you swallowed instead of sending that text, every time you chose to stay silent when anger begged you to speak, those moments were your initiation. That was you transmuting heartbreak into strength. You were alchemizing. And let's get real. Growth doesn't look beautiful while it's happening. It's ugly. It's crying in silence, forcing yourself out of bed when your soul feels heavy, pretending to be fine when you're breaking inside. It's not cinematic, it's sacred, because it's in those private moments that the shift begins. The moment you stop asking for closure from others and start finding it within yourself. At first it feels unfair. You'll think, why me? Why did I have to be the one who cared more? Why did I give so much to someone who gave so little? But the deeper truth is, you were never meant to win in that version of your story. You were meant to wake up, because every rejection redirects your energy from chasing love outward to cultivating love inward. It forces you to see that your worth was never meant to be borrowed from someone else's attention. That's the transformation they'll never understand. They thought rejecting you would break you, but instead it made you sovereign. You stopped begging for peace and started becoming it. You stopped asking for validation and started walking like you were born worthy. That's the real plot twist. When you become the version of yourself that no longer depends on their approval, the entire dynamic shifts. They'll look at you one day and barely recognize you. The glow, the calm, the control, it'll confuse them, because your pain evolved into power quietly. No announcements, no revenge, no show. Just silent ascension. The same energy they dismissed now radiates so strongly they can't look at you without feeling small. That's the thing about transformation. It doesn't seek attention. It demands it. But remember, this kind of power doesn't come from pretending you're fine. It comes from facing your pain honestly, from letting it break you open instead of closing you off. You can't bypass grief if you want real strength. You've got to walk through it, step by step, breath by breath, until it turns from fire to fuel. That's what makes your comeback authentic. Not arrogance, not pretending, just resilience carved from truth. So the next time you feel that ache, the loneliness, the sting, the emptiness, don't see it as weakness. See it as refinement. Your heart is being recalibrated for a higher standard. Every time you resist the urge to chase what broke you, you reclaim a piece of your soul. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you teach yourself control. That's the alchemy. That's turning rejection into power. You're not the same person who got left behind. You're the person who learned that peace is the loudest form of strength. And once you've built that kind of peace, nobody can take it from you again. Not them, not the memory, not even your old self. Write this in the comments right now. My pain made me powerful. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that you've turned your heartbreak into high ground. Because what's coming next, my friends, is the rise they never saw coming. The moment your glow becomes the mirror to their regret. Stay with me. Number 5. The rise they didn't see coming. They buried you, my friend, but they forgot. You were a seed. It's poetic, isn't it? How people can watch you break and mistake it for the end. How they can walk away, feeling justified, certain you'll never recover, not realizing they were standing at the opening scene of your rebirth. Because there's something about pain. It doesn't just destroy, it transforms. The same fire that burned you down now fuels your becoming. The same silence they misread as surrender was you reloading. At first, the rise is invisible, quiet. It doesn't happen with thunder. It begins in stillness. It starts with you waking up one morning and realizing the heaviness in your chest is a little lighter. It starts with you making your bed, cleaning your space, eating again, breathing again. These small victories don't look like power from the outside, but make no mistake, they're sacred. They're reclaiming pieces of yourself, one small act at a time, and as you rise, you start to see it, the illusion you once lived under. They didn't leave you because you weren't enough. They left because they weren't built to stand beside what you were becoming. They couldn't handle the light you were about to grow into. Some people can only meet you when you're small because your power threatens their comfort. So when you finally begin to glow again, don't be surprised if your silence draws their attention, if your peace unsettles their spirit. Because the same version of you they ignored will now be the one they can't stop thinking about. Imagine this like a movie scene. You're walking through the same city, the same streets, but something's changed. You don't walk fast anymore. You don't flinch when you see reminders of them. You don't need to prove anything. There's a calm in your stride, a quiet confidence that doesn't demand to be noticed. But it is. People feel it before they even understand it, because healed energy hits differently. It's magnetic. It doesn't chase. It attracts. It doesn't explain. It embodies. That's the power of your rise. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't even need to be seen. It's enough that you can feel it, that you can look in the mirror and finally recognize yourself again. But here's the twist. Your transformation won't just surprise you, it'll haunt them, because people rarely appreciate what they have until it's redefined without them. They'll see your glow, your strength, your composure, and they'll remember the version of you that once begged for their attention. But that version no longer exists. You've evolved, you've upgraded, and that's when the confusion begins. They'll start asking around, they'll start watching from a distance, pretending not to care while keeping tabs on your every move. They'll scroll through your pictures longer than they'll admit, not because they suddenly love you, but because they don't understand how the person they left behind became someone so untouchable. That's the sting of regret. It doesn't come when they lose you. It comes when they realize you no longer need to be found. But here's the part that makes this rise truly powerful. It's not about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about finally being free. Free from their opinion, free from their energy, free from the need to be understood. Your growth becomes a quiet rebellion against every version of you that doubted your worth. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't compete. You simply exist, and that alone speaks louder than any explanation ever could. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." Be one, that's what your rise is about. It's not about telling the world you've changed. It's about showing it through how you move, how you react, how you refuse to be pulled back into chaos. Your energy becomes self-contained, sovereign. You stop asking, "Do they miss me?" and start asking, "Am I proud of who I've become?" And as you answer that question, the energy flips. The one who once thought they had control now feels powerless. The one who once dismissed you now feels your absence like a weight on their chest. Because your evolution is the one thing they can't compete with. It exposes the version of themselves that stayed stagnant while you kept growing. They thought leaving you gave them freedom, but it only gave them space to realize what they lost. My friends, this is the beauty of transformation. It doesn't beg for recognition. It simply is. You don't have to shout your worth. Your presence now does it for you. The same people who once doubted you will come to learn that the calmest energy is often the most powerful, because peace is the final form of revenge. It's the proof that you've mastered yourself. But let's not sugarcoat it. Rising isn't easy. It takes nights of questioning, mornings of discipline, and 1,000 moments of choosing restraint over reaction. It's a process. You'll relapse into old feelings, miss people who don't deserve your energy, and doubt your strength. But keep going, because every time you rise, you're not just healing. You're becoming the proof that rejection was never the end of you. It was the beginning of your clarity. So let them talk, let them wonder, let them regret, because your silence, your discipline, and your peace are rewriting your story in real time. The person they rejected will never exist again. What stands here now is someone new, refined by pain, defined by peace. Write this in the comments right now. I rise in silence. Show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that you've outgrown the need for validation, because what's coming next is when your strength turns into something magnetic, the moment they start chasing the energy they once discarded. Stay with me. Number 6. When strength becomes the new attraction. The same silence they once mocked will be the calm they crave when their own world starts shaking. There's a strange shift that happens when you heal. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't explain, you just move differently. The same people who once felt superior, who thought they could live without you, suddenly start looking at you through new eyes. Why? Because your strength, your peace, your emotional control has become magnetic. What they used to call cold, they now call mysterious. What they once labeled distant, they now see as discipline. You've become the thing they can't define, but can't stop thinking about. You see, when you were broken, they felt powerful. They had control. You needed them, and they fed off that attention. But when you started healing, when your energy became still, it disrupted their illusion, because control only works when the other person is reactive. The moment you stopped reacting, the balance of power shifted. Suddenly, they couldn't read you anymore. They couldn't trigger you. They couldn't feed on your emotional responses. And that's when curiosity turns into obsession. Imagine it. You walk into a room, same face, same voice, but something about your presence feels different. You don't rush to fill silences anymore. You don't over-explain. You don't compete for space. You've become grounded, unbothered. That kind of energy hits people in the gut because it radiates security, and most people are addicted to chaos. You're calm now, and calm is confusing to those who only understand drama. They can't figure out how you became so collected after they were so sure you'd fall apart. That's the irony of growth. They left when you were learning to walk, but now you're running, and they can't keep up. They were drawn to your softness once, your care, your heart. But now it's your composure that draws them in, your restraint, your mystery. Your silence became your power, because people crave what they can't control. They feel safest near what they can predict. And you, my friends, have become unpredictable. You see, strength doesn't announce itself. It hums quietly beneath your words, in your posture, in your energy. It's the peace in your eyes that says, I don't need to prove anything anymore. That's the kind of presence that pulls people back. Not because they're suddenly enlightened, but because they feel your energy shift and don't know how to handle it. The version of you they rejected is gone, and the new version doesn't seek their approval. That's what makes them curious. That's what makes them chase. Let's be clear, though. This isn't about ego. It's not about playing games or pretending not to care. True strength doesn't fake detachment. It earns it. You've gone through the fire. You've faced your pain. You've sat in your silence. And now your peace is real. It's not performative. It's protective. You've learned that you don't have to raise your voice to prove your value. You don't have to defend your worth. You embody it. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best answer to anger is silence." The same principle applies to power. Real power doesn't react. It simply remains. You've reached a point where your silence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. And that unsettles them because it exposes the truth. They can't access you anymore. Your energy is closed off to anything that doesn't match your peace. Now here's where it gets psychologically deep. When you rise and become self-contained, people who once dismissed you start projecting onto you. They start imagining that you're happier, more confident, maybe even seeing someone new, and that uncertainty drives them insane, because they used to know everything about you. You used to tell them when you were sad, when you were lonely, when you were struggling, but now they have no access. And the human mind hates what it can't predict. Your silence becomes their unsolved mystery, and that's when strength becomes the new attraction. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you've genuinely outgrown the need to be understood. Your aura changes. The energy that once pleaded now pauses. The heart that once rushed now rests. You've become the calm they can't find in themselves, and that's intoxicating. They'll circle back. Maybe not with words, but with curiosity, watching your life unfold from the shadows, wondering if you ever think of them, wondering if you still care. But the truth is, you don't need to, because once you've tasted peace, chaos loses its flavor. And here's the part that hurts for them the most. You didn't have to cut them off dramatically. You simply stopped showing up. No anger, no announcement, just distance. That's what unsettles people the most. Not your absence, but your indifference. They expected you to fight, to cry, to demand answers. Instead, you gave them nothing. And nothing, my friends, echoes louder than any goodbye. You've become untouchable, not because you're perfect, but because you've mastered the art of emotional restraint. You know when to speak and when to walk away. You know that not every battle deserves your energy. That's real power, the ability to protect your peace even when everything around you tempts you to break it. So when they start circling back, when they start testing the waters with casual messages or subtle posts, don't fall for it. Remember, your strength isn't proven by how fast you respond. It's proven by how calm you remain. The same person who once underestimated your silence will now find it haunting. Write this in the comments right now. My peace is power. Show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that the calm they once took for granted has become your crown. Because what's coming next, my friends, is when that power becomes tested, when they finally come back, but this time you won't need them anymore. Stay with me. Number 7. Why they'll come back, but you won't need them anymore. The same door they slammed will one day haunt them, not because you locked it, but because you learned to live without opening it. Here's what no one tells you, my friends. People rarely leave and forget. They leave and circle back. Maybe not right away, maybe not in the way you expect, but they always return when silence replaces attention, when your energy stops feeding their ego, and when your peace becomes the loudest thing in the room. But when they do come back, something's different. You. The version of you they left behind no longer exists. They'll come back because curiosity always follows detachment, because your absence, once invisible, becomes magnetic when they realize the energy they took for granted isn't waiting anymore. At first, they'll test the waters, a message, a reaction to your story, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" They'll act like it's nothing, but make no mistake, it's everything. It's an attempt to measure the temperature of your silence. But your silence doesn't feel the same anymore. It's colder now. It's clean. It's not silence from sadness. It's silence from strength. When they left, they thought they were escaping pressure. But what they really escaped was accountability. They thought they were walking toward peace. But what they really entered was emptiness. Because, see, they believed the story that leaving you meant freedom. But freedom without meaning quickly becomes loneliness. You were their emotional mirror, the proof that they mattered, the reflection that made them feel whole. Without it, they had to face themselves. And that's the part they couldn't prepare for. There's something psychological that happens when you move on quietly. You trigger the unfinished story in their mind. People can handle being hated, they can handle being argued with, but they cannot handle being forgotten. Because when someone forgets you, it forces them to question whether they ever mattered. That's why they come back, not always for love, but for reassurance that they still exist somewhere in your world. But by the time they return, you've changed. You've spent too many nights rebuilding what they broke. You've learned that peace isn't something you beg for, it's something you protect. You've seen what life feels like when you stop chasing clarity from people who thrive in confusion, and now they're standing in front of a version of you they can't manipulate, charm, or emotionally control. That's why they start acting nostalgic, soft, maybe even apologetic. It's not that they've suddenly matured, it's that your strength reminds them of everything they lacked. And let's be honest, it's tempting when they come back. You'll remember the good moments, the laughter, the softness. You'll feel that old ache rise again. Part of you might even wonder, maybe they've changed. But deep down, you'll know better. Because you've changed. You've seen behind the curtain, you've learned the pattern, you've understood that closure isn't about getting an apology, it's about realizing you no longer need one. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The same applies here. If it doesn't bring peace, don't reopen it. Don't let nostalgia trick you into thinking comfort equals connection. The person who left you in your storm doesn't deserve to stand next to you in your sunshine. Let them watch from afar. Let your growth be the consequence they never expected. Because when they see you now, calm, composed, untouchable, they'll feel it. The weight of every choice they made. The silence they thought meant defeat now speaks volumes. It says, "You had access to a version of me you'll never meet again." That truth will echo in their chest longer than any argument ever could. And here's the most powerful part. You won't even feel angry anymore. You'll just feel free. That's the ultimate victory of healing. Not revenge, not proving them wrong, but realizing you don't need anything from them anymore. You don't need closure. You don't need validation. You don't even need them to miss you. Because you're no longer seeking to be understood. You're living in understanding. You've found peace in knowing that what's meant for you will never leave in confusion. And what leaves in confusion was never meant to stay. So when they come back, and trust me, they will, look at them with calm eyes and a steady heart. You don't have to be cruel. You don't have to make them pay. The truth is, life already did that for you. Because nothing stings more than realizing the person you once underestimated became the one you'll never get back. You became the lesson, the mirror, the standard. And as you walk away this time, it won't be out of anger. It'll be out of peace. Because real strength isn't about closing doors. It's about realizing some doors were never meant to open again. You've outgrown the need to explain why. Your silence now speaks the language of power. So, my friends, remember this. People will come back when your energy stops chasing. They'll crave the peace they once called boring. They'll long for the calm they once took for granted. But by then, your heart will be too evolved to entertain what once drained it. You'll smile, wish them well, and keep walking. That's what emotional mastery looks like. Write this in the comments right now. I no longer wait, I walk. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your strength has become your story. And if this message spoke to your soul today, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because, my friends, this isn't the end. It's the awakening. You've turned rejection into rebirth, silence into power, and pain into peace. And from this point on, your story doesn't chase, it leads.